Pete, great to have you with us. Thanks for your time. Big night last night, but again, there's many more to come with the college football rankings. Was there anything in particular you noticed? Is the theme or the narrative of how they pick it different this year, and did they abide by it?
Listen, last night was a starting point for how we judge the rest of the rankings, the rest of the way leading up to Selection Sunday. There's a big takeaway I had. I spend so much time chasing down news and info and stuff. I don't exactly walk away with the biggest set of opinions, but the one thing I did find interesting was the College Football Playoff Selection Committee made a big deal, and the 10 commissioners made a huge deal about it this summer, about strength of schedule and strength of record and how that was going to be factored into the rankings process. And they wanted data to back up how people felt about teams. And then you go back and look at it last night. Okay. And 1 is Ohio State, 2 Indiana, 3 Texas A&M. Texas A&M has the harder strength of schedule and a harder strength of record than those two schools when you look at the comparison. So it does leave you kind of scratching your head wondering how much is the data actually factoring in.
Pete, obviously a lot of these things are going to get worked out because a ton of these teams in the top 12 play each other. BYU and Tech play each other this week, for example. But the ACC right now, they're not getting 2 teams in no matter what happens, more than likely. Which team do you think has the most staying power to be the ACC team that gets in?
Yeah, it's tough. It's funny, you want to say Notre Dame, but obviously they're not in the ACC, but they play so many ACC teams. I'm confident that Louisville, that Miami has what it takes to make a run and get in the playoff. And I say that just because, Virginia does not have the hardest strength schedule. The Massey system that we use at On3 has Virginia with a 70 overall strength schedule. And the last 4 games is not that challenging, but it's also been a Virginia team that we've seen had to, they barely squeaked back Louisville. They almost lost to North Carolina. It seems like, they keep playing close games. So I'll be very interested to see how Virginia closes out the year.
I'm sorry. No, keep going.
No, I was just going to say, I know Georgia Tech obviously just lost for the first time this past weekend at NC State. We'll be interested to see how they do the rest of the way. If they win out, they'll obviously get in because that would include an ACC title. It's really hard to kind of pick through the ACC, though, right now.
So the Big 12's in a pretty good spot. Would you not agree compared to where last year that everyone was just kind of there with Arizona State and even BYU, that they're in a pretty good spot, even with the head-to-head? That might even make it stronger if it's a close game, too.
Yeah. I pull up the chart and stuff. So, like, BYU, has harder strength schedule than Texas Tech. Texas Tech obviously has that loss to Arizona State. I think Saturday, is going to be a must-win for Texas Tech when you kind of look at them getting in the Big 12 title game. And then on top of that, I think, and I know it's early and everything, but one of the only ways that Tech's going to be able to get to the playoffs is if they win out and win the Big 12. Just because of the way things are starting to shake out. Obviously, BYU, Texas Tech, Utah, they're all well positioned right now. But then once you start to factor in conference champions and how the SEC and Big Ten shakes out, I think it could be a two-bid league. But that would mean that Texas Tech's going to have to win a lot more football games.
Pete Nakos, On3.com with us, On3 Sports with us on 365 Sports.
Well, Pete, you have been you're always very busy, but given the nature of what you do cover, specifically for On3, coach hirings and firings and that, this has probably been a very busy season for you so far. Hugh Freeze, the latest one to go. From everything you've learned, how long was this really bubbling from where most people thought it was bubbling to when it actually was, and where do you think Auburn goes from here?
Listen, the 0-4 start, the SEC play was the writing on the wall that things probably weren't headed in the right direction. and then, they squeak by Arkansas, and you say to yourself, okay, maybe Hugh Freeze can turn this around. Maybe he goes home, beats Kentucky. Things really head on the right track. And then the ugly loss. You kind of knew Saturday night after that 10-3 loss to Kentucky, after, Hugh had to go back and forth on with his quarterbacks and things. It just, you had that sense that what was going to happen Sunday, and then it did. In terms of where Auburn goes, we're going to hear so many names at Auburn. So it'd be way too early to pick a favorite. But names that are popular, we got John Sumrall, James Franklin, Eli Drinkwitz, Jimbo Fisher. I mean, I can go on and on. There's going to be a lot of names brought up at Auburn.
Pete, how much do you think a league like the Big 12 could be affected by this current cycle?
I think the way Baylor finishes the season is going to be really interesting. How things shake out for Dave Aranda is going to be interesting in terms of impacting the coach carousel. I don't know if there's going to be a huge impact. Obviously, how Colorado finishes the year is something a lot of people are monitoring. Who Oklahoma State hires, it might turn out to be a quieter year in the Big 12 in terms of the carousel.
Do you see any of the coaches outside of the Big 12 among the FBS schools that were fired that would be a possibility or would be interested in coaching in the Big 12?
In terms of guys in line for the Oklahoma State job? Or?
Yeah, the Oklahoma State. For example, Hugh Freeze is not coming to the Big 12. James Franklin, I don't think, is coming to the Big 12. Anybody Napier, I don't think is going to be coming to the Big 12. Is there somebody that, because it seemed like to me, I don't know about Oklahoma State, but it seemed like to me that the high level popular names among the G5 and 6, Traylor, Morris, and others might be the ones that are more of a fit for the Big 12 schools in the offseason.
Yeah, the early names at Oklahoma State, it's really North Texas, Eric Morrison and USF South School. Those are two names to know. I think the only way that we see big change in the Big 12 is if some of these coaches decide to try to move up and get into the SEC or Big 10.
Pete Nakos, On3.com with us on 365 Sports.
Pete, do you think what do you think has to happen at schools like Florida State for them to pull the trigger?
Where was that again? I'm sorry.
FSU.
I think a loss at Clemson this weekend could go a long way towards that. But man, they looked really good against Wake Forest. They won 42-7 after that disaster at Stanford. And they have a schedule right now that sets up well to win out the rest of the year. They go to Clemson, and then from there it's home against Virginia Tech, at NC State, and then at Florida against an interim head coach. And at that point, if they go 7-5, we're having conversations about there's no chance that Mike Norvell gets fired. But I will tell you guys, I know I reported it at the time, but there were a group of boosters and high level donors and decision makers who really wanted to make a move on Mike Norvell that Sunday after Stanford. And that's why the AD there, Michael Alford, put out that statement Monday that they were going to wait to make an assessment on the program until the end of the season. Now, all that nice stuff I just said about going 7-5 and winning out the rest of the way, that could all go out the door, though, if they lose at Clemson this weekend. Mind you, a 3-5 Clemson team.
Where are you on, and I hope he succeeds. We saw the offensive coordinator story with Fritz Schumer, and Dion, again, has not commented. I saw your note about that, too. Where are you with him? And we obviously know he's battling some health things that you never know if that could turn worse, and I hope to God it doesn't. But where are you on him? Would you give 100% stamp of approval he'll be back next year?
Yeah, I don't want to get into that because I don't know the situation as well as some other people do. I hope he's doing okay.
No, I do too. I hope it is 100%. I'm not trying to get you to say something you don't want to say, but does that concern you at all?
I don't know if anything concern. Obviously want the best for his health, and I think that there's going to be some questions he's going to have to answer in terms of staffing and his roster and things at the end of the season. It's kind of right last year. Travis won the Heisman. That was a huge moment for them. Question moving forward is going to be like, what is the Colorado football program without Shedeur and Travis? And they're going to have a quarterback question to answer to. I know they're going to start Julian Lewis this week. He's the true freshman. They're really excited about him. He looked good last week against Arizona. If he takes another step forward, then that probably answers the quarterback question. But then you're also kind of left asking, why didn't he start most of the season too?
I got a question about LSU, and I appreciate your time. We all do. With all of what we saw with the governor and all the other things, and they're trying to settle it, President, AD, all that's now been official. Is there any coach, no matter their commitment, the money, the passion of LSU, that wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole?
That wouldn't touch LSU?
Yeah.
No, I think what happened this week was putting a president in place and naming Vic Osbury the full-time AD. I think that answered a lot of questions people had about alignment at LSU. Now, the next big question that candidates are going to have is what is the financial pool in terms of pay and NIL, and people make up such a big deal about fit and facilities and ties to the school, but at the end of the day, for the head coaches who really care about winning, they really only care about how much money you're going to pay them and how much you're going to give them to build a roster, because they want to be highly paid, but they also know that they're never going to find success on the field these days if you're not going to provide $20 to $30 million to put a roster together.
Absolutely.
So if LSU can check off those two boxes, I don't think it's going to be a detriment to the candidate pool. But I'd be lying to you also if I didn't say there was a lot of people rolling their eyes and sending texts out last week when the governor made the comments he did. But it seems like those questions and concerns have been answered.
By the way, one note about On3 Sports. I saw this from Pete. They now have, because the portal has changed until January 2nd, it is now a new feature about marked as expected to enter the portal, because, of course, that's not opening now for at least almost a couple of months. But that's a new feature on their site, on3sports.com. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate your insight as always. Have a great day.
Yep.